All right, and we're back with our first conversation for the morning. We have our cane farmer folks from up north. We're talking about members of the Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association, Mr. Andy Westby, the chairman of the Bscfa
I know.
Committee of Management, Mr. Javier Keme, who is the Bscfa Finance Committee chairman, as well as Mr. Oscar Alonzo, the Bscfa CEO. Gentlemen, we've had you guys on Open Your Eyes a few times. We've also had you air your stories out on the newscast several times. But when it relates to the negotiations, ongoing negotiations between Bscfa and the ASR BSI, the last place we left off with the negotiations, if I remember correctly, was at the height of a dispute, the height of a protest, which in December of 2021, which then led to some easing of tensions when it appeared that if an agreement was made to negotiate and to have a negotiation by the end or before the end of the sugarcane season. The sugarcane season has come to an end. Where are we with those negotiations?
Okay, good morning, and thank you for having us this morning, right? As you know, the crop ended on the 29th of July, no?
Yes.
And I think 2 days later, you had the extension to the commercial agreement also came to an end. So currently, the Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association does not have a commercial agreement with BSI. We're still in the process of trying to finalize a new agreement for the coming crop, no? It has not been an easy process, as you know. Incidents or events led up to that series of activities in December and for the extension, and we had hoped that between the period January to now we would have had a new agreement in place. And we still have the same proposals that we had put forward at the beginning, which are 5, right? The matter of how we want to negotiate how the price of cane is being paid, how it is calculated, how it is being paid, how the price of bagasse is being calculated. Also, we're trying to insert a clause in there that commits BSI to daily grinding rate that would benefit cane farmers. And finally, the aspect about the length of the agreement. Those are still our proposals. And BSI has still been adamant during this whole period that is not prepared to negotiate any clause that implies a transfer of value, and even is sticking to the fact that the minimum period is 7 years. So we are at a point where it's practically like a stalemate. We have asked the intervention of the government. I think you have heard about the news, where we met with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister gave certain commitments, right, and that would enable the process to be completed before the end of the new crop. I think a binding committee has been given for us to get an independent consultant to come in and mediate the process, right? Because we found that further discussions is not leading us anywhere. It's time for an independent consultant to come in. Government has committed to have that consultant in place.
We understand that you have a presentation prepared to kind of give us an insight into what.
Yes, but I was just trying to update you where we are at the moment, right?
Okay.
So that then, within that context, the presentation can be given.
Right.
And also, the Prime Minister has committed to speak to the bankers, right, to ensure that they continue to provide credit to our members, right, for them to prepare for the next crop. I will invite Mr. Keme to go into that exactly where we are with our proposal for the calculating the price of the cane, right, and so on.
Mr. Keme?
Okay, good morning, Paul, and good morning, April, and your viewers. We have a presentation. The presentation is an exercise, an analysis that we did on how the current system has been harmful to or on a disadvantage to the farmers over the years. We did a history study, an analysis from the crop 2006 to the present, and we can show in the chart, in the graph, a table how over the years the portion that the farmer is getting or has been getting is being shrinking, is been getting smaller and smaller over the years, and much worse in a higher in a higher pace,
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
in a higher pace over the 4-5 years, the last 5 years. So that is where we concentrated the analysis, analyzing the current system, how the current model has been at a disadvantage to the farmers. And we can show with that table the evidence that the amount that the farmer used to get before 2017 was an average of 53, 54, up to 55% of the total proceeds of the sales of sugar and molasses. And in the last 5 years, it have shrunk to under the 50%. Last year, it was 49%, and it has been in 1 year 48%. So we have been losing over the years 5 to 6% of the total revenues. And where in the analysis we did, where is this percentage being accommodated? It's being accommodated in a series of deductions that is done, and these deductions is the provider for these services is the Belize Sugar Industries Limited, or is the mill itself. So it goes back to the portion. Remember that we have a current model of 65-35 of the net strip value. So when we have the gross proceeds, there is a series of deductions that is deducted for export, and some other charges, some other deduction that has been added these last years, which is part of the processing cost. So this has been increasing before 2017 from an average of 14-15% to 25% of the total revenues.
Wow.
So that is the percentage that has been worrying the farmers, because all the cost of production prices have been increasing over the years, especially these last years, and the portion that is remaining from the net strip value model has been shrinking.
So when we're talking about net strip value, just to be clear, we're talking about the amount that is divided between farmers and the company
Right.
after expenses,
Have been
deducted. So that's a 65, 40, 35 model,
Yeah.
right? And so where is this additional, you're saying a jump from 14% to 25% thereabout in processing expenses? Where is that going? Or has the company been able to account to you in terms of why you've seen that increase?
Well, it's been accommodated on the portion that is being given as services from the mill.
New services, additional services, an increase in price for these services?
One, the new one is the manufacturing allowance. That is a new one in this last agreement that expired in January, that was signed in 2015. That component started to form part of the deductions. It wasn't before.
I want to come back to the negotiation process, because you have your proposal laid out. You're saying these are the numbers, this is what we need, this is why we need it. What is then the follow-up from BSI ASR? What are they counteracting with?
The last communication we've had with them is basically an offering of two options. The first option will be the continuing of the current model with the insertion of one clause. And the clause they are offering as an addition is that we, Bscfa, could hire an independent auditor to verify the figures that the auditor of BSI has done. So that's option one. The option two is that they accept our formula, our proposal, which is the 60-40 from the gross revenues, and but there is a series of implementation changes how they would implement. It's not a direct 60-40 split from the gross revenue.
How are they proposing?
Two main changes. One is that the direct consumption sugar, they would be paying it as raw. That is an average of $400 Belize per ton less. So, and that is one of the biggest differences. The next difference is that they would still want to include some costs. And because you know that they are changing the transportation from the sugar from the system they had before to the barges. Now they are using the road by trucks, and they have some other costs that they would be encountering, which is the port in Big Creek, the transloading. So there are additional fees that they would be facing.
Do you guys believe that you're being unreasonable in your ask to ASR, BSI, given the numbers that you've put on the table, as well as the numbers I understand that they've put on the table?
The thing is, we're not being excessive, right? All we're asking for is that we want a fair price to be paid for our cane. Now, to establish a fair price, right, you have to be clear on what the costs are really, right? And there are two fundamental costs that Mr. Keme has raised. The one is local handling, which deals with the whole issue of transporting the sugar to the port from which it will be exported. That has been a sort of a stone around the neck of the industry for years because of the high cost it was incurring with barges to the Belize city, right? And it was hoped that a cheaper way could have been found, right? Now, there's hope that this move to Big Creek would have been a cheaper way, but apparently they have said that it costs more to them by road than by barge, right? But they're going to absorb that additional cost as a sign of good
standing
with the farmers, right? And the other issue is the allowance that he has mentioned, right? The manufacturing allowance, which is fine. I mean, they say if there's a cost, okay, fine, it has to be covered. But the thing is that we have not been able to get from BSI is how they have arrived at those costs and the proof, because they are the ones that establish the cost of and they pay themselves that cost, right? Okay, so all we're given is that one sheet, as Mr. Keme mentioned, the net strip value. This is the cost, that's it, and we have to pay it. But we don't have no access as to verify to make sure that those costs are really beneficial, economical, right? Okay, so that's all we're asking for. But then they have to propose that they will give us the right to hire an auditor to audit the figures. Now, before you audit a figure, you have to make sure that those figures are correct, that you agree with them. So that when you come and audit it, then you're auditing that's something that you have agreed that is fair, right? And this is where we disagree then.
Fundamentally, you're saying you don't agree with the figures.
We don't agree because we're not able to verify it, okay? What we need is verification, because the fact is that we pay 65% of those costs, right? We are the ones that cover 65%. They only cover 35%. So by virtue of that 65 coverage, we feel that we have the right to see how you are, what basis you are putting for incurring those costs, not just telling us.
So
right?
then what are the figures that they have provided look like to you? You said they want to give you a sheet of paper.
Well, they have claimed that certain savings will be made, right? Okay, and they put it to ocean freight. The boat will be here 5 days instead of 20 days, and because of that, then there would be $2.5 million worth of saving, and the farmers will be getting a benefit. But they have inserted another charge to that element, which is terminal and handling fees, and we don't know what that will be. At the moment, they have said that okay, that is just there for as a sort of nomenclature, right? You know, you're naming a cost, okay? But this has been their practice. They have put in names of costs, and eventually they attribute it. Once you sign an agreement, you're stuck, right? So you have to accept it. What they're saying, okay, let us, and in fact is when they are applying their formula, the 60-40 formula, they are already attributing a cost to that same charge. So they're saying, on the one hand, they're saying, right, if you stick to the NSV and so on, that charge is there, but we're not going to be putting any figure for it. But if you want us to apply the 60-40, then this charge will have to have this. So you need to be clear.
What needs to be explained now for the viewers to understand? That there's a certain expense that needs to be analyzed, whether that should be under the processing expense. Because the more expense you have after deducting of those expense, the portion that stay is reducing, and it's reducing drastically on the side of the farmer. And on the side of the miller, it is increasing because that expense that is being spent or charged goes back to the miller, whilst on the farmer side,
Right.
over the years is going reduced, and the more expense you put, the more it reduces on the farmer side. So that is why we have done our investigation in different factories and also in Santander. So we are analyzing the thing on a whole, that over the years this has been the norm of putting investment on an expense, while that should be on your 35%.
So
Yeah.
you're
So what I want to show, the farmer invests on their 65 in the millions, but we don't put it on our overhead expense to recover that expense.
So you're
We
not
bear
making
that
a
with that risk.
profit at
So that is
all.
something we are trying to explain to the public, that in 2015, when we give up the ownership of the kin, after it weighs, that becomes BSI's property.
Property.
There in the agreement states how payment is being done, no? But why should we spend in something that is not ours? That is BSI's factory. Just like the farmer, they spend on their trucks, we don't put it and recover for their expense. So that is something we are trying to explain, why this negotiation, it's not an easy negotiation, but it has to be based on a transparency to way forward, the way forward, right?
Do you feel? Go ahead. Sorry.
The charges have to be really studied where they should be accommodated.
right.
Because this is the disadvantage that have been over the years over the farmers, and that is something we are open to negotiate, but on their side, they look at it as a transfer of value, which is not. Right? That is why whatever transfer of value, they don't want to negotiate. But if you sit down and analyze each thing that you are charging, which 65% is being paid by farmers, and accommodate where there needs to be accommodated, then the reality will come out.
A transfer of value simply means that they're processing the cane and they're giving you sugar, and then that's
No,
what they're.
a transfer of value, they interpret it as any amount of cash that doesn't go into their portion anymore. They deem it as a transfer of value. So I mentioned that in analysis we did from 2006 to the present, we can see that value was on the farmer's portion, but over the years it was transferred to the mill side over the years.
Yeah.
So what we are calling for is that value should come back to where it should be, or where it was before, right? So and it got worse after ASR came into the picture, right? When ASR bought the mill in 2012, we can see that the trend of reducing the portion of the farmer is more evident, right, over the last years.
Yeah.
So that's why the proposal of Bscfa is a simpler formula.
Right.
It's a very simple, it's a direct split, 60-40, and we expected that the negotiation would be that they would come negotiating the percentage. You know, we can't work with 40%.
Yeah.
Because of our cost, this and this, we need over more than 40%. So we thought that was going to be the negotiation, but as I mentioned to you, the second option was that they accepted the 60-40, but with their implementation, with their ways of implementing it, which results in the same or worse than the current system.
Yeah.
When you move those figures, you run. There are two major risks that the viewers have to understand. The first risk is that when you value a direct consumption sugar, a good paid specialty sugar, you pay it as a raw sugar, that is a cost, a value of more than $400 per ton. Less, right? If you take into account that the investment that they did of 22 million in 2017 was to expand the volume of production of direct consumption sugars, which means that volume will be increasing. It was around less than 10,000 at that time. It has been to 35,000, like this crop year we just finished. We reached 35,000. And their target is to reach 50,000. So that means there is a room for 15,000, 20,000 more tons to thousand tons to be produced in the forthcoming years, right? So that means that the gap or the loss for the farmers getting paid for that volume at a cheaper price, it's going to be more severe damage for the farmers. So what we don't want to happen is that the farmers, we accept this model, and then the coming next 3-4 years, that comes to show that it plays against the farmers. Then they would say, well, that's what your leaders were fighting for.
Yeah.
And that's not what we are fighting for.
So
What we
then-
are fighting for is a straight split from the grassroots.
So then let's talk about what the farmer makes on the per dollar investment. What does the farmer make out of a dollar that he invests?
It varies, and I will put it simply this way, Paul. To do a maintenance cost for a farmer, that maintenance cost, that is, you have the cane planted, it's ratoon. You just have to do the cultivation, the spraying, the cleaning, fertilizing, and what's not. Removing the planting. That is around $25 to $27 per ton. And it costs you an average of $30 per ton, per ton to harvest it and put it to the mill. So you are in an average of $52 to $55 at cost on maintenance cane. Now, if you are going to plant, that increase tremendously.
I want to get more into, so that is the average farmer, but what about the small farmers, businesses? So you always don't have the farmer that has their family that works within that same category, right? What does their salary look like?
Well, you put the numbers. Right now, we have an estimate of $60 per ton.
Okay.
If you are spending on you're not replanting any, just maintenance. You have your cane established, right? You're living with $8, an average of $8 per ton. That's your profit. That's your net profit, we could call it. So that $8 per ton, you put the cost of a family life for an year. What's an average? 10,000, 12,000. So how much tons you need to get that amount to call it a living from the cane farming? So we have seen this. We have changed the way the farmer used to see it as a living, as a culture. Now we are seeing it as a business, what we are investing in our production, right? So that is what when you do your investment, you take into account all the factors, the components of your work. That is in the farm, investment in the farm, investment in equipment, investment in infrastructure, roads.
So it's safe
Everything.
to say that the negotiations are still ongoing. There's no conclusions to be met as yet, and it is also safe to say that certain parties will not budge, and therefore now you have certain parties coming to you in the situation of a lawsuit. So I want to kind of go into.
Well, I think if you allow me, if you allow me, I would just want to make a comment on
Of
the
course.
participation of the government responsibility in this. All of the disadvantages on the farmer side that we explained just before is because of the result of the 7-year agreement signed in 2015,
Yeah.
right? And that was because we approached the government to intervene in the negotiation in 2015, but the government preferred to stand by.
Abstain.
Exactly, and the conditions put forward by the mill was successful. So when that happened, that triggered us that it's taking the same path. The negotiation is taking the same path. So we approached this administration and asked them what will be their position. Will it be the same as the past administration, or they will take, because I think the farmers expect a clear position from the government. And we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, which the CEO explained on the outcomes of it.
So what?
Yeah.
So
Tell
we're
us the
wrapping
situation
All right.
with.
The thing is, there are several factors affecting this negotiation, right? And I think the company realizes that it doesn't have a government that is amenable to their suggestions, right? It's a government that is not inclined to see how it could put a balance in the system. So what happened? They have taken a lawsuit against the Bscfa and 4 of its members, right, for approximately $1.6 million.
To what end?
Because for claiming financial losses, right? BSI claiming financial losses because they couldn't produce the sugar that in those days. Belcogen claiming financial losses because they could not get the bagasse to produce electricity to sell to BL. Okay, and this lawsuit is being filed against us and 4 members of our association. Fortunately, before we signed that agreement extension last December, we got a commitment from the government of Belize that if in the event that we were being taken to court by BSI, they would deal with it, right? And they are dealing with it right now. Okay. Only this thing that BSI made a mistake, right? They made a wrongful claim against one of our members, who was not there, and they had to admit that they wrongfully made a legal claim, and they have withdrawn it, and we have accepted it without cost, right? So it's only against us and 3 of our members. The other issue now has to do with the revision of the Sugar Industry Act. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this BSI has been able to use that act, right, to keep its control over most of the issues that we have mentioned, right? And this is why we're saying that the act needs to be amended to provide a greater balance between the functions and the powers affecting farmers and the mill. One of the sections, I'll ask Mr. Keme to explain it better, right, for the act, because he, as a farmer, appreciates this more. It has to deal with 661, right, which they have, BSI has filed a constitutional challenge against the government of Belize in relation to several aspects of the act, because it has always been, from 2015, their intention to deregulate the industry, to get rid of the particular entities like SCPC that help to coordinate after activities.
And we're saying that there needs to be more regulation.
So I'll ask Mr. Keme to deal with that.
If you could do that in under 30 seconds, which I'm sure is not possible because we do have to wrap up this segment, but we would love to have you guys back as we continue to negotiate, as the process continues.
But just for the viewers' sake, wrap it up. Tell us how the revision is going and how we can continue moving forward.
Well, the Bscfa has asked to the government to see on this section 61 in a different approach than BSI. The Belize Sugar Industries is have a suit against this one and this section on the approach of a regulating body. They want a deregulated industry. So what the Bscfa is looking for is that this section opens the opportunity for any other investor that is interested in investing on another mill in the north, and that is primarily the intention of it. That's one of our dreams as Bscfa, to go for our own factory. The history has been that the clause says that there is a first option exclusivity for Belize Sugar Industries up to 1.5 million tons of production in place. Wow. And even if we haven't have that production, BSI has never milled 1.5. So, for example, if there is interest in any other farmer, any other manufacturer to place a factory in the north, we should have at least 1.6 or 1.7, and the additional 100 or 200,000 tons that we would have as production, then we would be able to accommodate on the second mill, on the second factory. So what we are asking the government is to remove that 1.5 million exclusivity to allow the competition in the manufacturing side as well. Wow. That is what we, in an ambitious futuristic,
very ambitious
ambition.
And there is a reason. There is another reason why I say this, and Paul, because in the meeting we had with the government, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Agriculture made a comment that there has been up to now two investors that have touched the doors of the Ministry of Agriculture with the interest of investing in a new factory.
I
here in
will
the
just say as we close out that right now you don't find a lot of investors wanting to touch the sugar industry with such low yields in terms of the competitiveness on the regional
Well,
and international
well,
market.
well,
And so that's another issue that needs to be addressed across the
Yeah.
board in
But
terms
it
of
should
production.
be about
Well, I have an answer for that, Paul.
Tell.
The reason is not what you are saying.
Right.
The reason is because of that clause. Because any investor that want to invest here, we have to have the production at 1.7, 1.5 over 1.5. So we have 1.3 and we can sell the 1.3. BSI can only process 1.1, 1.2 million tons. So what is the incentive for me to increase my production, increase my productivity if I can sell my production?
When the farmer is taking that risk. That's why we have most farmers that can't pay their loan, because that can't stay in the field. That is money lost for the whole country, and also worse for the farmers because they need to recover and pay their investment, and if they can't stay in the field, that's a risk for us.
Gentlemen, I have to wrap up the conversation here because obviously we could
So
continue.
they have to come back, as I want to hear about that negotiation.
Yes.
No, it's ambitious. You never hear
Indeed,
about something
April,
like that.
but
And that
we
is
don't
coming from
want to
our
encourage
people.
these men to
I
continue
didn't encourage
talking.
do it. We are talking about it after this.
Thank you, Tree. It's always a pleasure to have you on set with us to explain negotiations and this important issue that continues to affect. We're talking about grassroots
Our farmers.
sugarcane farmers
Our people.
on the ground, and we do hope for the best.
And I hope you haven't forgot the intention of doing a picnic in the sugar industry.
I haven't. Sir,
Yes.
good I
You
saw
know
you
Ghana?
this morning.
You know Ghana? Can I come?
So with that, we're
We're
going
gonna
to
wrap up. And before we do, we have to introduce the Phoenix Boutique Date Night. Date Night, sorry. It's a new one. Date Night outfit of the week. Check it out.
Welcome to the Phoenix Boutique. Let's get ready for date night. Here we have our Meraki pink clay earrings, our cider corset printed balloon sleeve top, Zara white trousers with golden buttons, Zara studded pink heels, and a Calvin Klein pink leather clutch.